It's time for the Kim Hammer Show, where you'll learn how your state government affects you, your family, and community. Here's Kim Hammer.
Good Saturday afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. This is the Kim Hammer Show. I always want to remind you that if you want to get a repeat of the show, you can go up to any of the podcast platforms. You'll find it on Spotify under the KimHammerShow.com. You go up to my website if you want to. We keep up pretty relevant and important information that I think appeals to the listening audience that follows me. That's at the KimHammerShow.com. And even the information that we'll have on the show today, you'll be able to go up there after a little bit of time for my programmer to get it loaded up and find it up there on the KimHammerShow.com. We're going to get right into it today because we do have a full hour just like we did last week. Last week, you may remember that my guests were Jerry Cox with the organization here in Little Rock. Also, our Attorney General, Family Counsel. Sorry, Jerry Cox with the Family Counsel. We had Attorney General Leslie Rutledge from here in the state of Arkansas. And we had Dave Ellswick, famous host of the Dave Ellswick Show right here on 101.1 FM The Answer. And the subject was the fact that last Friday, our Attorney General certified that in Arkansas, abortions are illegal as a result of the trigger law that was passed by then Senator Jason Rapert. And we had a full discussion about that. But we're going to take a little bit of a different look at it today, something that you might be interested in. And I have calling in today Jim Hardin, who is with a organization called Erasing the Need. Erasing like on an eraser on a pencil. erasingtheneed.com. So if you want to go ahead and pull up that website, as long as you're not driving, don't do that if you're driving. But if you're sitting still where you can, it's erasingtheneed.com. And Jim, I thank you for being on the Kim Hammer Show today here on 101.1 FM The Answer.
Oh, it's an honor to be with you today, Kim. I really do appreciate it.
Jim, first of all, just so the listening audience can get a little bit of a comfort level, why don't you talk about who you are, what your background is, why it is that you earned your way up to the ranks of getting on the Kim Hammer Show, and just tell a little bit about yourself and about your organization. Anything along the personal line that you want to share just so people can get a comfort level with you.
Yeah, sure. ErasingTheNeed.com is our website. Our organization is Compass Care Pregnancy Services, and we're based in New York, which is the abortion capital of the U.S. And as you know, based on your last show, the reversal of Roe versus Wade did not outlaw abortion nationwide. It simply kicked it back to the states to decide, like Arkansas did, to decide for themselves what to do about the abortion problem. And New York, of course, is keeping it legal and plans to pay for women's travel expenses as well as their abortions using taxpayer dollars to fund the new abortion tourism. Governor Newsom in California has also done the same thing. Compass Care, our organization that I'm CEO of, serves women directly, women seriously considering abortion, facing unplanned pregnancy. And we have several operations across New York State, as well as we've been training pregnancy centers. We have 650 pregnancy centers all across the country using our materials and our strategies. And we've been preparing for this inevitability of abortion tourism since 2018. We saw that there was, in the pipeline of the judiciary, an opportunity for the Supreme Court to reverse Roe. And reverse Roe they have. So what that means is there's going to be an influx of women coming to New York and other abortion hub states from conservative states to get their abortions, and we have to continue to refocus and reframe our efforts, our pro-life dollars and our pro-life strategies to those handful of states that are going to be doing all the abortions. So Compass Care was firebound. That's what many people know about. Compass Care's Buffalo office took the brunt of the pro-abortion terrorist fire bombings. So Jane's Revenge took responsibility. Jane's Revenge is a pro-abortion terrorist group, domestic terrorist group. Their motto is, if abortion isn't safe, then neither are you. And when on June 7th, I got a call from my regional executive in Buffalo saying the smoke alarms are going off. So this is 2:30 in the morning. I said, well, okay, let me know. We were on a heightened alert, and we had already notified the police and the FBI that we were concerned about threats from Jane's Revenge and firebombing. And this was 2 weeks earlier. And when the police and fire rescue arrived on June 7th, they found all the glass broken in the windows and fires were intentionally lit. And then the signature graffiti scrawling on the side of our building said, "Jane was here," referring to the organization Jane's Revenge. They later took responsibility. A couple days later, they took responsibility for the firebombing and increased their threats, saying they're going to encourage themselves to do things that are not so easily cleaned up as fire and graffiti. So there have been no arrests. Investigations are ongoing. There have been 60-plus attacks like this across the country. It is a pro-abortion crime wave that was sparked by the early leak of the Roe versus Wade reversal decision, Dobbs versus Jackson, and so we're hopeful that they're going to find some of these perpetrators. We know there's multiple perpetrators across this country, but the pro-abortion politicians are doing something odd. They're not denouncing, they're not criminalizing the violence, and worse, to add insult to injury, Kim, when 6 days after we were firebombed in Buffalo, the New York Governor Hochul, signed a law not investigating arsonists, not asking the state attorney general to proactively investigate this domestic terrorism, not protecting pro-life organizations and people. She sent $10 million to increase security for private practice abortionists, and then signed a bill to investigate pregnancy centers. At the press conference when she was signing this bill, she called us Neanderthals. It's dystopian. It's surreal. I can't begin to describe to you how it makes us wonder what kind of world we're living in right now.
Nazism. But go ahead. Sorry.
That's what it feels like. In fact, it's funny you should bring that up, because when we had our press conference on June 7th, when our place was burned out, and by the way, they wanted us to stop providing services. They wanted us to be in fear. But we're not in fear. We fear God alone, and we believe this is God's mission, and we're going to keep moving forward. And the very next day, we were up and running in an alternate location due to the generosity of the church in Buffalo. Absolutely amazing story. So we also continue to serve patients that were scheduled for that day. I've got a good story about that too, fascinating stuff. But when you say Nazism, on that day, June 7th, I said this is the face of abortion, and I pointed at our building that was burned out. Okay, catastrophic damage, going to take weeks and weeks to repair. And I said, this is the pro-abortion crystal knock. That's what I said. And I was surrounded by reporters. And I had one reporter look at me kind of askance, like, really, is this really that? I'm like, well, look, crystal knock is the moment where in Nazi Germany, 1938, the brown shirts essentially targeted Jewish-owned businesses and went in the dead of night, broke the glass in these businesses, and lit them on fire. Due to the lack of public eye, on the part of the political elite to denounce and criminalize the violence, the violence tipped into the general population, and it spiraled out of control, as we all know from history. And that's exactly what seems to be happening against pro-life people, Christian pro-life people who are simply trying to serve women because of what we believe about the value of human life, both preborn and born, are being targeted for violence. And there have been no arrests, no additional resources allocated, law enforcement resources allocated to protect organizations and people. A refusal, and it's not just a refusal to denounce the violence, but which aids the violence. It emboldens the violence. But they're actually beginning to attack us. So not only being attacked by pro-abortion terrorists, we're being directly attacked by these pro-abortion politicians, and attacking us instead of going after the arsonist. There needs to be equal protection under the law, and that is the spirit of Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health. You know, the original case, Roe versus Wade, said that the word person does not apply to the unborn. And Dobbs versus Jackson came out on Friday, and it said the Roe decision was egregiously wrong, precisely on that point. Personhood. The Bible says that the opposite of love is not hate, it's partiality. The royal law is to love your neighbor as yourself. And we don't get to decide, we don't get to play God and decide who qualifies for our favor and who doesn't qualify for our favor. We don't get to say, well, this person's a person under the law and this person isn't. No. Either everyone is equally protected under the law, or the law is a farce. Justice system is just a mirage. And that's what that's what Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health is all about. Everyone, no matter who they are, no matter where they are people and deserving of blessing and protection under the law. And that's exactly what these pro-abortion politicians are fighting against. And it makes no sense to me. It is unjust.
Do you now you live in New York or upstate New York? What part of New York you live in?
Yeah, my wife and family and I live in upstate New York in Rochester.
Okay.
But we're not in Rochester because we had to relocate our due to the threats of intimidation.
Okay.
There's what is called doxing.
And the reason I ask, I don't want you to pinpoint where you live. The reason I'm asking you that is do you sense among the voters of the state of New York that they are getting frustrated with the type of politicians that you are describing, or are they kind of like the frog in the kettle? They're acclimating to the environment and they're just going to sit there and die as the water boils. What is the overall read of people, because New York's a liberal state, let's admit it, and do you think that the general population up there is getting tired of it to where there could be a reversal of the control of power at the state level?
I think that so my hopeful answer is yes, based on my anecdotal experience, Kim. And I say my anecdotal experience is because I was put on the ballot for a town board position last November, and I did zero campaigning. I spent $0. I did nothing except for the fact that I was put on the Republican and conservative line, and I got elected. I got the most votes out of anyone, and it was not because of who I am. It was because of the line I was on. People are sick and tired, and this was not unique. I was not an anomaly. People are sick and tired of the propaganda, of the shenanigans, of the pro-abortion, really Democrat Communist Party. And if you were to look at New York State, there have been hundreds of thousands of people that have moved out of New York State precisely because of this problem. And people are not being represented. Not only are they not being represented, that they're being disfavored. They're being dehumanized. If you don't agree with the Democratic pro-abortion politicians, then you're being dehumanized. We were dehumanized. The governor, essentially called us subhuman. Just because we don't provide or refer for abortions, just because we don't want to be part and partial to an unethical and immoral industry. It's wrong. If the government needs to protect anyone, it needs to be especially those who disagree with them ideologically, because that's the only way you're going to have a stable, civilized order.
When you talked a while ago about the state of New York paying for abortions for people to come in, and you referred yourself as the new abortion tourism, which I know there are people, that are leaving states like Arkansas that have outlawed abortion altogether. And then you've got, businesses, national businesses that are offering to pay their employees that if they want to get an abortion, upwards of $4,000 in order to be able to go to a state where they can get the abortion. The general overall attitude is in the circles that you run in. If I'm a taxpayer in the state of New York, I would be mad that my taxpayer dollars are being used for that, given all the other needs that are out there. What is the general tone or temperature of the people that you talk to that the state of New York is using taxpayer dollars? It seems to me if I was a taxpayer, I might want to challenge that, but to pay for abortions, because you might even, is that just for the citizens of New York, or is that for anybody? Like if somebody from Arkansas wanted to come to New York and get an abortion, they'd be paid $4,000 by New York.
Well, that's just it. It's for anybody. And paying, I don't care who you are, if you're Republican, Democrat, independent, paying for somebody else's abortion is very unpopular. You look at any poll you want to look at, put out by anybody, anywhere, and you will not find that paying for somebody else's abortion is something that everybody enjoys. It's not a concept that anybody favors. I think that you get these radical pro-abortion politicians who are essentially tools of the billion-dollar abortion industry, doing something. They're essentially abusing their power to promote a private industry that is immoral.
Well, what's the difference? What's the difference between? I mean, if I had somebody I didn't like, and I wanted to pay a hitman $4,000 to go out and kill somebody, and they found out that I did that, and then they came back and they arrested me for hiring somebody to kill somebody. What's the difference between that and the state of New York paying $4,000, or what's the difference between that and these national companies that are paying their employees to go and get an abortion? What's the difference between that, as paying $4,000 to go kill human life that's not outside of the womb yet? I don't draw a distinction between the differences. So if you're going to be held to a criminal charge at one level, why wouldn't you be held to a criminal charge at another level?
That's a really good question.
And maybe that's what we ought to look at legislatively, is maybe we ought to look at that if you pay for an abortion, then maybe you need to be charged with the crime of having somebody killed. That's just popping in my head as we're recording here, but go ahead and give your input.
Well, I know while the Supreme Court gave this issue back to the states to decide for themselves, Biden came out on Friday when the Dobbs case came out, basically saying, these women who and girls for that matter need to be they don't need to be forced to bear their rapist child, is what he said, and they need to be able to travel, and he's going to ensure that these girls and women can travel across state lines to get their abortion. But here's the thing. Traveling across state lines to cover up a crime, like using abortion, is already a federal crime according to the Mann Act. The Mann Act, M-A-N-N, prohibits the transportation of victims of sex crimes across state lines by their abusers in order to cover up those crimes through things like abortion. And then you got 22 states' attorneys general. They came out, was it yesterday or the day before, signing an open letter saying they're going to do everything in their power to ensure that every woman gets to travel across state lines to get their abortion. Well, are they going to enforce the Mann Act? I mean, what does this mean? It would appear that 22 states' attorneys general and the President of the United States are refusing to enforce the Mann Act. I mean, they seem to be agreeing with the motto of the pro-abortion terrorist group, Jane's Revenge. Their motto, instead of saying it to us, pro-life people, these pro-abortion politicians are saying it to sex crime victims. They're saying if abortion isn't safe, well, then neither are you. The role of law enforcement, like states' attorneys general, is to enforce the law. And will they enforce the Mann Act? It's against the law. And if they're refusing to enforce it, it seems to me like they're aiding and abetting. To your point, Kim, they're aiding and abetting in a major crime.
The state of Arkansas, when I had the Attorney General's office on last week and had the other individual with the Attorney General in going to the finer details of the law, one of the things we talked about, in Arkansas could be perceived as a checkmate as far as abortion being legal. I think that was made obvious because shortly after that show, or shortly before that show, there was a letter that was sent out by the Department of Health ordering our one abortion clinic to cease and desist, and they started canceling, and people started going other directions. And the comment was made that we had, here in Arkansas, we have checkmate the abortion industry, but that doesn't mean the battle is over. And everything we're talking about now, I think, is going to take us into the new phase of the next battle. In states that have outlawed abortion, we're going to have to take it from a different direction, that if individuals start paying for other people to get abortions, and if governmental institutions are not willing to uphold the law, then I think what we've got to do is we've got to start now being aggressive and holding people accountable for their actions, it having been outlawed. New York, New York, where unfortunately you guys haven't got there yet. Maybe one day you will. You'll just have to keep up the fight to get it to the point where we are, that we have checkmated it. And I'm not sure how long that'll be for y'all up there.
Well, we gotta be wise. We gotta be courageous. We've got to do things like, at the federal. I think the federal level can help a lot here, because if you get Congress coming along saying, hey, look, we got this Mann Act here, and this is a perfect opportunity to identify, sex criminals, sex offenders. What we need to do is we need to mandate that every one of these abortion clinics in these abortion hub states have to get the information from these women who are traveling there and ensure and somehow verify that they're not a victim of sex crime. Because these abortion clinics have been known to be complicit in covering up sex crimes for sex traffickers. So we need to. This is a perfect opportunity for the federal government to come along, not just to do the things that they're doing right now with respect to abortion, but also to add layers of accountability to those abortion hub states. One of the things that they could do, and I'm pressing on this Congresswoman Tenney out of the 22nd District of New York, is promoting the 6-point pro-life equal protection program. I think these states, first of all, they got to define these crimes. I'm not a big proponent of hate crimes, but if they're going to have hate crimes, they should enforce it equally. And we're being attacked. These pro-life people are being attacked because of what we believe. We believe, we're Christians, and we believe that all people are made in the image of God and deserving of blessing and protection from the womb to the tomb without partiality. Without partiality. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, the opposite of love, the Bible says, is not hate, it's partiality. It's me playing God getting to decide who qualifies as a person and who doesn't, who qualifies for my favor and who doesn't. And the Good Samaritan is the great parable that says, I'm radically responsible for the person who's beaten and left for dead on this dangerous Jericho road of culture that we live in. I'm radically responsible to help the weak and the vulnerable. I'm radically responsible to leverage my voice, my power, my resources to give that person's life back to them. And there's no one more weak, more vulnerable right now in our society than a child in the womb whose mother thinks that she's got no other choice but to have an abortion. And we need to protect these pro-life people.
All right, I've got to take a quick break, but I'm going to leave it with this, and then we'll come back after break at the bottom of the hour. Just a couple thoughts. Number one, I don't know why anyone in an abortion clinic would want to hide the fact that a woman presented to them with a child as a result of rape and incest, because in protecting, what they're doing is they're protecting the rapist and they're protecting the person that is guilty of incest, which means that if that person is never discovered, they can't be convicted, which means that they can continue to go out and do it again and again, which means that the abortion clinic is going to have a revenue stream created by those that are going to be the victims of the perpetrator that the abortion clinic has actually helped hide the identity of. I get it that the woman may not want to go through the trauma of that, but at the same time, there are other women that are going to go through the trauma of it because there's not a break in the cycle where people that ought to be responsible in reporting those things should be getting reported. Evidence of the fact that that which is good is evil and that which is evil is good, which is the time that we live in today. This is Kim Hammer. This is the Kim Hammer Show, and we'll come back after the break in just a little bit. I've got Jim Hardin, who is with Compassion Care, and we'll talk more here in just a little bit when we come back from the break. Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show. Thank you. My guest today is Jim Hardin, who is with Compassion Care. And Jim, just again, for those that may be tuning in, go ahead and give the address to your website or anything where they can follow you and just take a deeper look at who your organization is.
Yeah, if people are interested in staying up on what's going on across the country, go to erasingtheneed.com. That's erasingtheneed.com.
I'm actually typing it in while you say that because I was trying to bring it up and couldn't get it, but I got it now. So you heard the comments I made just before the bottom of the hour. I'm just curious we'll talk about the state of New York. Do they require individuals to declare how it was that they became with child, such as might reveal if they were a victim of rape or incest or if it was voluntary action? Is that part of the information that's required under New York law that they collect?
As far as technically, yes, but we have Planned Parenthood and other abortionists have been caught in the past encouraging women not to tell them exactly how they got how it came to be pregnant, because that would force them to have to report, and they don't want to have to do that.
And why don't you think they want to do that?
Well, it cuts into their business model. I mean, the abortion industry is not interested in helping women. They're interested in helping themselves. They're interested in the bottom line. They're interested in money. And you know, they're $1 billion business, and they don't want to have to interact with the dark side of, well, they don't want to be associated with the evil that abortion actually is. They don't like to talk about abortion at all. If you notice, Planned Parenthood and all these abortionists, they don't like to talk about the word abortion. Why? Because it's unpopular. And there's a reason why it's unpopular. No one enjoys it. Not a single woman alive says to herself, well, I can't wait to get an abortion. Not a sane woman alive wants to have an abortion. She feels stuck, trapped, like she's got no other choice, like she needs to have an abortion, which is why our mission statement is to erase the need by transforming her fear into confidence.
I was noticing on Fox News on Wednesday, to your point of what you said a while ago, that your state has been declared a safe harbor state for those that are seeking abortion, and that the state of New York has committed $35 million to pay for out-of-state patients to come. And Phil Boyle, New York State Senator, Republican, I believe, did he speak out against that, or what was the position that he was taking, or do you know?
Well, knowing Phil Boyle, I would imagine that he spoke out against it. You know, it's safe harbor is an irony. Essentially, it's a storm-tossed death sea is what they're inviting. These pro-abortion people use propagandists. They use the opposite words to manipulate the masses about what they're actually doing. You know, abortion is not anything other than abandonment. Abortion is not choice. Abortion is not health care. Abortion is pure and simple is society's unwillingness to help women, to be the community for women, to love women to such an extent that they give her all the support and security that she needs in order to make the most difficult choice and have the baby. Abortion is simply, you know, give us your money and we'll get rid of the baby. What is abortion? And this is a debate now going around. What is abortion? People are thinking NPR. NPR is going around saying, hey, well, you know, because Roe is reversed, women are going to be dying and they're not going to get the necessary care for their ectopic pregnancy or their miscarriage because it's the same procedure. All these, you know, fear-mongering propaganda that's going on out there. Well, can I just define what abortion is for everybody?
Yeah.
Abortion is the intentional severing of a healthy mom from a healthy child for the explicit purpose of destroying the life of the child. That's what abortion actually is. That is the definition of abortion. Everything else is OB care. And the NPRs of the world are saying the opposite. They're fomenting all kinds of fear, saying, well, the reversal of Roe is going to cause women to die on the operating table because they can't get services. They can't get care.
All right. Well,
it's just not the case.
Well, let me go back to my point a while ago, and not to beat a dead horse, but if you pay somebody, or you are the payer, the provider that pays for an abortion to occur, as with the Roe versus Wade decision being made, then why is it that you are treated any differently or any less than a hired assassin or somebody that is hired to go out and kill somebody? And why would you not be prosecuted to the full extent of the law equally to that of a person that goes out and hires somebody to kill them if you either participate or you hire a doctor to kill your baby for you, or you are the doctor that is killing the baby in what would be equivalent to an assassin that's been hired to kill somebody else?
Well, you've got a really good point, Kim, and I think that, you know, medical tort law would also be something that we need to consider. You know, if a doctor refers a patient to another specialist and that specialist ends up dramatically harming or killing that person, the doctor who referred that patient to that specialist is going to get sued. Well, why wouldn't the same thing apply to the state who's paying for these abortions? They're essentially referring women to get abortions, encouraging them to get abortions. Well, what happens when the woman is harmed? What happens when the woman dies or is dramatically injured, which happens frequently? with respect to abortion. Chemical abortion, by the way, now over 50% of all abortions in America are 400% more dangerous than surgical. Well, where's the consumer fraud protection from the attorneys general on that one? Well, why we're talking about reducing standards of care to women. This is not helping women at all.
I think what
Someone needs to be held.
I think what you're going to find that as these discussions play out, and it's a continued chess game, I think that as these discussions play out and we have these kind of discussions that are based on logical, law-abiding citizen kind of approach, that you're going to find that the abortionists and those that support abortion are actually going to be put further into the corner because they'll have no logical argument or response to be able to come out in response to that. But when you put people in a corner like that, regardless of whatever walk of life or whatever situation it may be, they're either going to become more submissive or they're going to come out with an attitude of revenge, and they're going to be driven by hate to do the things that they do. My personal opinion, I think that's where we're heading. I think we are, over the years, a 50-year battle have, through obedience to the law, common sense, a constitutional application to the law and the rulings of the law by the judges, that we are systematically dismantling their argument, which is putting them into the corner, and they don't like it, and as a result of it, they're going to come out with aggression.
Well, I think that's exactly what you just described is exactly what's happening. The militant wing of the abortion industry is Jane's revenge, and they're having trouble coping with the changes that have been placed upon the abortion industry as of Friday. It's similar to what would happen if the government went to the Ford Motor Company and said, hey, you can no longer have dealerships in 30 states. Wow. I mean, that's exactly what has happened to the billion-dollar abortion industry. They have to change their business model overnight. And so they're on the losing end. For the first time in the history of abortion in America, the pro-life pregnancy centers have the ability to compete head-on with the billion-dollar abortion empire. That's an existential threat to the abortion industry. I think they're really scared, and that's why I think they're lashing out. To your point.
And I'm not familiar with all the New York laws up there, but if I'm a business, and they are a business, call them what they are. They can say they're a healthcare provider, but they are a healthcare provider business, and their funding sources, which in Arkansas we've cut them off because we don't fund Planned Parenthood, but in New York, do the laws allow that you can take taxpayer money to subsidize a business the way in which they are doing the abortion clinics? Is that a normal pattern up in New York, that you can do that and it not violate any other laws?
To my mind, it is not a normal pattern. It is not considered, normal for the taxpayer funds to go to a particular favored political business. Here's a favored business that these pro-abortion politicians want to give taxpayer money to, and they're not even asking for it. It's not like a grant or anything. They're just
doling it out.
Cash in these profiteering organizations.
My mind's kind of blown. I've got notes all over the place, but you're taking me in a lot of different directions today. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, if I could elaborate on what's going on with the abortion industry nationwide is going to impact how the pro-life pregnancy center across the country are going to have to engage as well. If Friday's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Health immediately altered the business model of the abortion industry, that means they're going to have to go to this hub and spoke model. Okay, that means that women are going to have to travel, as I said before, from conservative states to the abortion hub states, or they're going to have to go online and get chemical abortions. We call them teleabortionists. So there's one new teleabortion business that's been starting every single week. It's an exploding market. Okay. So if 50+% of all abortions in America are chemical abortions, dangerous chemical abortions, and now a significant percentage of them are moving to online, meaning women will stay in their conservative states and go online, register with this teleabortionist, and get these dangerous drugs sent to them in the mail. That's an emerging market that we have to respond to as pro-life people, because abortion won't necessarily go away in Arkansas just because it's been outlawed relative to surgical procedures or receiving them from doctors within Arkansas. women will still be able to go online and go to these teleabortionists and have the dangerous drugs shipped to them to Arkansas from wherever, India, New York, etc. And we've got to be able to reach and serve these women through telehealth at these pregnancy centers before they travel and before they go online. That's the new dynamic, and that's what we're pursuing.
You know, I think one of the contrasts that needs to be clearly drawn, as anybody would listen to the show or any of the other interviews you've had, is that the intent is not to downgrade or to make any woman to feel less by the fact that we are taking a pro-life stance. But yet that's the way we've been painted, and that's the way we've been characterized. But I think a way to divide the conversation, divide the crowd, is to ask, for people to ask this question. If it wasn't for the money that the abortion clinics were receiving, obviously made out of acts of desperation that now the state of New York, a very liberal Democrat state, is willing to fund it at $4,000, and you've got woke companies that are willing to fund it for their employees, tells me that it's not about what is in the best interest of the woman. They could care less. What it's about is how can they keep their revenue streams going. So, I mean, that almost, you know, and I think about what your mayor or what your governor up there said as far as characterizing you as subhuman. How much more subhuman can you be that you are willing to take dollars in order to provide a service and make a woman maybe feel subhuman by the fact that they're having their baby killed? How much, you know, that's like the pot calling the kettle black, but not both of them are colored black. One of them is just trying to make the other one that color. And I guess I'm having a hard time distinguishing the difference between those that are of like the mindset of the governor of New York or these woke companies that are paying for these abortions and arguing that it's not about the money, because it is all about the money.
It is all about the money and the power. They're willing to sacrifice women on the altar of abortion. They're willing to sacrifice women on the altar of their campaign coffers. They're willing to sacrifice. This is not about women's health. It's not about choice. It's not about increasing.
It's not about love.
It's not about love. It's not about being a good neighbor. It's not about any of that stuff. It's all about the power and the money of the political elite to maintain control over the masses. They're looking to change essentially the moral framework of our country, and I think they had the Supreme Court to help them do that for the last 50 years, and now they don't have that tool anymore, and I think that's why they're going violent.
Well, at any time you threaten the life of a Supreme Court justice at that level, and you send people, you know, to kill somebody, don't think everybody below that benchmark isn't up for grabs either. And to the point that you made a while ago, and I'm just curious, you're on the front lines of all this stuff. Do you know people that are not Christian that are pro-life? Have you encountered anybody that is not a declared Christian that is pro-life?
I have encountered maybe one or two, and I've been doing this for 28 years. I've encountered, I think, and I'm thinking about two people in particular. Out of in 30 years, two people who are not Christian who are pro-life. Here's the thing: they're pro-life because of their Judeo-Christian heritage, the way they were raised in the Christian principles of what it means to be human under God, and that's really why people are pro-life, because they value all human beings. Well, the value of a human being comes from being made in God's image. That's where dignity emanates, and without being made in the image of God, then dignity is just, well, it's meaningless. It's just, whatever I say your value is, and that's why you see people willing to dehumanize and destroy other people, because they don't value human life as made in the image of God. That's where we got to start. And if we can't start there, if we don't value and if we don't insist on the value of our common humanity and protecting it and blessing it equally, then we have a major systemic problem. And it's the foundation for systemic injustice. The greatest injustice the world has ever seen is abortion. And we have a chance now, given the fact that Dobbs came out and Roe has been reversed. We've got a chance now to rehumanize America.
But, I think part of the challenge for the pro-lifers is this. There is and this is something that ought to cause people to be alarmed, in my opinion, based on your personal experience having your clinic bombed and the comments that have been made. The abortionists are making a direct link to those that are pro-life to be directly attached to Christianity and to the church. And therefore, if they're willing to go after a Supreme Court justice, if they're willing to go after a pro-life clinic that's not doing anything but trying to improve women's health by exposing them to the love that's given to them in the clinic, everything of which somebody that doesn't have a personal relationship with Christ does not understand, comprehend, nor do they embrace, then it only stands to reason that if they can't get a judge taken out, they can bomb a clinic but not put it out of existence. They're just going to go down the list. And I'm looking at this as a pastor, thinking of the end times, that as we draw closer to the end times and evil prevails on the face of this earth, that Christians are going to be subject to fair game. And if you're willing to kill a baby in the womb, which is obviously life, because God says, I knew you before you even consumed in your mother's womb, there is no value for life outside of the womb either. And therefore, those that are driven by this mentality, like what's represented in the governor of New York, will not stop at anything or protect anyone that is on the opposite side of any issue, and it makes it open season on those that are, in this case, supportive of pro-life. Now, if I've misstated anything or mischaracterized anything, you feel free to rebut me, but that's kind of the sense of where I think we are and the direction we are heading.
Pastor, you hit the nail on the head. In fact, you used the word open season. That's the word that they use. The phrase they use, Jane's Revenge, the pro-abortion terrorist group, said it's open season, quote unquote, on pregnancy centers. Think about
Which is terrorism.
It is plain and simple domestic terrorism. We need to remember what you just said. We need to remember that Jesus said this is going to happen. And that we need to endure. We need to prepare our hearts and our minds to stand strong in the face of a firestorm, most literally a firestorm. And God will bless us. God is our protector. God is our provider. We're not going to wait for the government to do the right thing, and we don't need to, because we're citizens of heaven, and ultimately everyone's going to be judged by God's standard. Jesus is the King of Kings, and He is the Lord of Lords, and my message to Jane's Revenge and the pro-abortion politicians is join me. Every sin is going to have to be paid for. That's what the Bible says. God is perfectly just, but He's also perfectly merciful. And since every sin is going to have to be paid for, either Jesus pays for them and we bow the knee to Him at the cross, in the shadow of the cross, or we end up having to pay for them ourselves forever in hell. And I'm inviting everyone in Jane's Revenge and the terrorist cells and the pro-abortion politicians to join me in the shadow of the cross, where I have found forgiveness, where the cross is violence to end all violence. That's what the cross is all about. And so the only way that we're going to find true joy, true fellowship with God, and true fellowship with our fellow man is by submitting to the lordship of Jesus Christ. And so I encourage everybody who's engaging in these violent attacks and violent words to join us here in the shadow of the cross.
I think one thing, we got about 10 minutes left, and one thing that I think the pro-lifers are going to have to do, they're going to have to start working on changing their messaging, because if a person, you mentioned a while ago that 2 or 3 over your lifetime of doing this of 20, 30 years, whatever it was you said, are not professed Christians. I think one of the things we're going to have to start doing as pro-lifers when it comes to messaging is this isn't just about being a Christian. This is about protecting life. Because I think when we take that approach and we have that conversation, you now put people in a position, whether they're saved or lost, or whether they know Christ or never accepted Christ, which, just a 30-second plug, if you want to know Christ as your Savior, all you got to do is acknowledge to Him that you're a sinner that cannot pay for your own sin debt, and that's what He did on the cross of Calvary. He gave His life willingly to shed His blood to give us that opportunity to receive Him as our Savior. Therefore, when we die, our sin debt is canceled, paid in full, and we get to go to heaven when we die. People that don't subscribe to that line of thinking, I think, are more than line of thinking. If people that have not experienced accepting Christ as their Savior at a disadvantage because they're not able to look at it from the perspective of Christ. One of the things I think we've got to do as Christians and as pro-lifers is we've got to change the narrative of the conversation about pro-life, even to make it just based on human decency and the right of a human to live beginning at conception. Science proves that life is there at conception, and that's our narrative in order to appeal to those that are not Christian, because if only 2 or 3 over a 30-year period are all you've talked to, obviously it's a us versus them game.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. We need to raise the level of the conversation in the country to the concept of personhood. What does it mean to be a person?
And at what stage do you start being a person, but take it to the other end of life? When are you no longer a person that we're going to use euthanasia? Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get that in. If we're going to have a discussion, it's got to be bookends.
It does. From the womb to the tomb. I mean, we have to say, look, who gets to decide who qualifies as a person? Who gets to decide what the criteria is for qualification as a person? I mean, that's insidious. That's dystopian novel type stuff. You know, you get these people, these small group of people in a dark room getting to decide who gets to live and die. Well, that's just wrong. Do we really want to live in a society where you get a small group of people deciding whether or not you're a human protected by the law, or whether or not you should be disposed of or sent to elsewhere, for example? We need to raise the level of conversation. And I think the Dobbs case is going to allow us to do that. The reversal of Roe was all about personhood, and refusing to recognize the personhood of the preborn child. The same thing. This wasn't the first time this happened in America. Remember, we called black people 3/5 of a man, and we got that overturned. It's just ridiculous to think that we can dehumanize a group of people that way so we can enslave them or destroy them. We don't want that, and that's not how civilized society can move forward. We have to either everybody is equally valuable and therefore inviolable, not to be violated under the law, or the law is just a tool to manipulate the masses.
Yeah. My programmer and I were having a conversation because it brought me back, and ironically, we had this conversation with a group of people last night, and I think I pronounced this right, the movie back in the 70s, Soylent Green. Do you remember that movie? Okay.
I do.
You know, when we watched that movie back then, it was a horror movie, and we're seeing it played out in front of us, because the reality is the mindset that's on the other side of the pro-life issue, a pretty harsh statement, but I don't see them having a problem with that. And maybe that's too harsh of a statement, but when you lose the value of life and you bring it and reduce it down to a level that somebody is the determining factor other than God as far as when you're born or when you die, you're not that many steps away from going in that direction. And go ahead.
You're exactly right. We don't want a society like that, because then liberty and rights become granted by the government. Your right to life is only given to you by the government, and the government is basically a small group of politically powerful elites that get to control everybody. That means that everybody's a slave. Everybody in society becomes a slave to the political elite.
I wonder if we'll see a movement, and when I think we're down about 5 minutes, 4 minutes, I wonder if we'll see a movement, because as we've talked this morning, as a lawmaker, I'm thinking these things, that when it comes to removing legal liability or accountability and opening up companies that provide prescription drugs for abortion, about removing some of the tort protection from them, because if there are cases where they're going to be taking these drugs and it's going to threaten the life of the mother or the life of the baby, why do we want to allow legal protection for a company that would do that? Are you seeing or hearing anything across your world that is having any kind of conversations like that?
No, but those kind of conversations are the kind of conversations that we need to start having. You're spot on. I look forward to seeing how that develops.
The one thing I noticed too on the news this week, that the contraception, and listen, people need to distinguish. Roe versus Wade and reversal doesn't mean you can't have abortion. You just got to go to a state where it can be provided and where they allow you that. So, and that's the other thing. When they like to confuse the narrative, they like to confuse the messaging, because it causes people to be confused. When people are confused, they're like a deer in the headlight. They just follow the herd. But one of the things I found interesting is that the contraception devices, pills, which is not involved in this discussion at all. And that's what they're afraid of, is we're going to reach out and grab that next, and that's not even part of the conversation as far as I'm concerned. But they, those are going off shelf. So my question is this: if they're going off the shelf at the rate that they are now, why could they not have been going off the shelf at that rate before, other than people didn't want to exercise their safety? They didn't want to exercise that option that was presented to them that, if used, would have prevented the killing of the life of a baby. And I got like 1.5 minutes, so you can respond real quick to that any way you want to.
Well, I think one of the reasons that they're afraid of contraception being targeted is because pro-life people are concerned about ending the life of a child from the point of fertilization. And some of these contraceptive devices and steroidal chemicals actually do that. So they're what's called abortifacient in nature. So they actually do or can have the potential of ending the life of a child that's been created, and then therefore they're abortifacient. And that's what the abortion industry is worried about. They're worried that, well, in fact, if we're heading down this road of abolishing abortion, then these particular types of contraception, which are not actually contraception, they're abortifacients, will be outlawed as well. That's what they're afraid of, and that's what they're responding to.
All right, tell you what, I'm down to my last minute, and I'll get you back on sometime down the road. It's been a fast hour on my side. I don't know what's been like on yours, and I appreciate you squeezing in the time today. Jim Hardin, and Jim, give the name of your organization again, or where they can go to find information about you real quick.
I'm the CEO of Compass Care Pregnancy Services. They can go to erasingtheneed.com. That's erasing, like pencil, erasingtheneed.com.
All right, we'll get that up on my website. Jim, thank you for joining me today all the way from the state of New York, and we'll follow up. And
thank you.
We'll have other shows about this matter down the road, and I appreciate you listening to the Kim Hammer Show today. Again, you can go up to my website, which is thekimhammershow.com, and you can get a replay of this. Go up to the tab, or you can go out to all the major platforms that carry podcasts, Spotify, etc., and get a replay of the show. Do appreciate it if you'd share it. Just kind of help spread the word a little bit, build the following. And I appreciate you being on the Kim Hammer Show today here on 101.1 FM and Facebook Live. Have a great Saturday.